in prisons, in prison departments and ministries of justice in dozens of countries around the world. And we have consistently promoted adherence to international standards and principles of human rights. During our time in Taiwan, we've met with supporters. We've met with many supporters of President Chen. We've met with representatives of the government. We've met with the Ministry of Justice, Speaker, the Speaker of the Legislature, several former legislators and current legislators as well, and then of course President Chen himself. We'd like to clarify from the outset that we've undertaken this mission without any political or partisan agenda. We're not affiliated, nor do we support or oppose any political party or any political interest. Instead, we've tried to engage in this work strictly to engage all the parties involved and to bring a solution and bring a solution to the increasingly grave and serious health issues that have arisen in the course of the weeks and the months leading up to it. We'd like to express our sincere appreciation to the Minister of Justice, Chen Yufo, for providing us access to President Chen, and more importantly, making a number of important improvements in the condition of his detention, including increased time outside of his cell, access to a table and chair, and increased time for visitors and family members. However, one of the fundamental principles of imprisonment is that when a government makes a decision to imprison one of its citizens, it also takes full responsibility for the health and the well-being of that person. It's this point that's of utmost concern to us, and it creates what we feel is an unprecedented urgency in the case of President Chen. The minimal and often hasty medical examinations that have taken place, they have been done in what we consider an inadequate manner. However, they have raised concerns over respiratory and circulatory problems. There are a number of, there was a report last week, as we mentioned earlier, of an MRI that identified a 4 by 4 millimeter lesion in the frontal lobe that might have been caused by a stroke and has remained undetected for possibly for months. There are further reports as of this week that as many as 10 additional infractions and blockages in the brain might have taken place since those initial findings. Since the comprehensive medical reports and test results have not been made available to the President Chen or his family, a more complete understanding of these developments is difficult to make. Overall, there's evidence that the years and years of inadequate physical activity, movement, and the prison conditions themselves have contributed to muscle atrophy, tendinitis, and many of the problems that I've mentioned above. They cause serious concern, and they're very likely to have led to the serious downturn in health and cognitive ability that we've seen in the past week. In response to these concerns raised by our team and others in the course of the week, President Chen's, as well as regarding President Chen's slurred speech, disorientation, and unusually high level of fatigue, the Taiwan Penitentiary Department has agreed to conduct more extensive and thorough body of medical examinations. We've learned this morning that there are plans to transfer. In fact, I think he has been transferred now to the Honorable Veterans Hospital as of this morning, and where these examinations are to be carried out with a more fully equipped facility and an expert staff. While we welcome the move, we feel that it reflects a constructive spirit and a good faith concern for the former president's condition that was in evidence during our meetings in the past week, especially on Tuesday and Wednesday. We're seriously concerned about the selection of the hospital and the manner in which the examinations are likely to be carried out. The so-called Oath of Athens of the International Council of Prison Medical Services states that medical judgments are to be based only on the patient's needs, and they are to take priority over any non-medical matters. Assigned to a government military hospital itself draws into question the degree of independence of the hospital and the examinations that will be carried out. During our meetings with the government, the paramount importance of carrying out these examinations in an open, objective, and transparent environment, one that would build trust and confidence in the within the polarized political environment within which these concerns have risen. And the precipitous deterioration of President Chen's health has had to be stressed. We specifically requested that the medical team carrying out these examinations be comprised of the highest level professionals agreeable to both the Ministry of Justice and the family and supporters of the former president. Under the standard minimum rules of treatment of prisoners, all prisoners have the right to an independent, objective evaluation of their medical condition. We believe that in the absence of an agreement by President Chen, the examination of the examination panel and the terms under which these examinations will be carried out, the planned examinations at the Veterans Hospital cannot be considered independent. While we agree that, especially given the urgency of the medical concerns in question, they must take place very quickly, the government's previous practice of providing hasty and inadequate medical examinations should not be repeated. In addition, in the absence of an agreement from all parties involved regarding the conduct of these examinations, it's not only inconsistent with the assurances regarding objectivity and transparency that we received earlier in the week, but it runs the risk of reinforcing the polarizations that have taken place throughout the week, through this episode. Finally, it will inevitably bring into question the confidence of the results of the examinations and the subsequent treatment. In the course of our mission, we've encountered many people in the government and outside of the government who've approached this critical situation with goodwill and with a deep and genuine interest to assure the humane treatment during detention. As we've noted earlier, it's often said that one can understand a great deal about the values and principles of a country by the treatment of those in its prisons. Having visited President Chen, learned of his treatment and the profound deterioration of his health that's resulted from that treatment, we look forward to hearing what measures the government of Ma Ying-jeou seeks to undertake to ensure the well-being of President Chen. We do not view this as a special privilege bestowed on President Chen, but rather a reflection of the government's commitment to carry out its role within the its obligations within the framework of international standards and the principles of human rights. Thank you. We can take some questions now, and we have the ability, we can translate your questions, so you can feel free to ask them in Chinese, Taiwanese, if you'd like to. Thank you.
我想 OK， please。
对，我用中文发问哈，就是说这个调查团队在这里面有讲到说，那个娟小姐说，到转院到荣民总医院这个决定并不适当。那我不晓得在调查的过程当中有没有发现，就是说荣民总医院确实曾经过去有什么，就是说不适当诊疗，就是说不适当对待病人，或是说转诊病人这样子的例证，就是说在人权团体的调查当中，谢谢。
对，这边有问题问。
This gentleman would like to ask about, just now you say Chen Shui-bian, President Chen, transferred to Honorable Veteran Hospital is not suitable, appropriate. During your investigations, have you found any maltreatment or malpractice by this hospital to any patients before?
No, I think you've misunderstood the point slightly. I think you've misunderstood the point slightly. It's not a question of the hospital. It's a question of the transparency with which the examinations and treatment are carried out in the hospital. As a result of our discussion, we've been assured that the examinations would be carried out or would be overseen by medical professionals that are agreeable to both parties. That the transfer to a medical facility needs to be expert, and we have every reason to believe that the Veterans Hospital is an expert, has capability and skill. However, it is a government hospital, and as a result, it's more influenced by government policy than might otherwise be. Therefore, it's even more important that all the examinations and the care provided in the hospital be done in an open and transparent manner. So that's the point that we'd like to make, and we look forward to making sure that both the Penitentiary Department and the Ministry of Justice ensure that open transparency exists in this department. Now, we do know that President Chen raised objections to being sent to this hospital specifically for its association with the government and the military, and the concerns about security and about the care and influence of the examinations. I can't comment on the hospital itself, but we can see that based on prior examinations that have taken place and prior care that's been provided to President Chen, there have been inadequacies, both in the extensiveness, how extensive the examinations have been, and how timely they were.
那个要翻译一下，阿罗他讲大概有6点啦。他说，并不是说荣总的医术或是以前的经验有任何的不好啦，而是说他认为陈水扁总统他这个医疗必须要在透明化的环境里面被公开的检视。那由于这个荣总呢他这个陈水扁总统跟家属并没有同意要去那边，然后他认为应该要这个法务部跟阿扁总统跟家属双方都同意，这样是比较好的。那由于荣总跟政府跟军方的密切的关系呢他怕说荣总会受到政府的影响，会比我们去影响荣总还大，等于说他会影响到这个怕荣总受到政府的影响那这个检查应该是在一个公开可被监督的一个方式底下来进行。那由于这个荣总他跟政府的关系呢他觉得这个可能在这里比较不妥当，而不是说荣总的医术他们不信任，大概他的重点在这里。OK。
Well, it would just be nice to really try to push the point that there's no attempt to make any presumptions on even the intention of the hospital staff or the medical team that examines President Chen at the military hospital. It's just that appearance-wise, there's the appearance of a bias and a partisanship without the ability to observe. And what we had actually recommended was that whatever decision was made and wherever the treatment might have taken place, that there be people from both sides of this political divide present. So if, for example, President Chen had been treated at a hospital that was perceived as being overly sympathetic to his political side of the polarized debate in Taiwan, we would have also recommended that the government would have been allowed to send observers there. It can't be emphasized enough that we are pursuing this on the basis purely of human rights, because it doesn't matter if you're green or blue, you're human, and you're entitled to human rights.
因为哈罗他讲的意思他最主要是说荣总呢很显然可能会有所一些 bias 存在的那这个医院的选择呢他说因为这个是有政治两边的这个立场嘛 那最好是两边都能够同一个医院的这样会比较好。然后我们可以这个派观察员的去那边做一个比较从这个监督的角色，这样的比较能够被接受。好，这是刚才哈罗先生他所做的补充。Any more questions？
请问一下依国际上的惯例上来讲这样子的情形会不会有什么样的对前总统的这种情形，依他们的经验来看的大家这边想了解一下，就是说是不是很正常的，还是说有一点好像是电视上报道有点不太正常的这种情形，好不好？这个是比较重要的。
This gentleman would like to know, according to international standards, the treatment of President Chen in Taiwan now is normal or abnormal, according to these international standards.
At this point, I would say that there are limited. The concerns related to international standards are primarily around healthcare. In the past few weeks and months, improvements have been made in his access to time outside of his cell. Perhaps in the near future he'll receive a bed to sleep on. He has a chair and a desk to work at now. So there have been significant improvements. However, I think it's important. Oh, do you want to translate that? No.
Okay, you finish.
Okay. However, I think one of the things that we've learned from years and years of work with prisoners and prisoners in detention is that the kind of deprivation of physical exercise, outside movement, access to conversation and activity, intellectual activity, is what causes the kind of illness that we see now. So, in fact, 4 years, the kind of isolation that he's been kept in for 4 years is consistently a major factor in the kind of illnesses that have occurred now, and inevitably the government has to take responsibility for that. So I won't raise, I have relatively minor concerns with his conditions right now. The problem is that the prior conditions were so severe and restrictive that those are the ones that have caused the physical and medical concerns that we see at this point.
汉斯说呢，最近阿扁总统在这个监狱外面看医生的这个医疗的待遇呢，有大大的改善了但是呢，他说呢，因为阿扁总统这4年受到这样的拘禁，然后没办法充分的跟外界的接触、讲话，然后运动呢，是造成他这个生病的主要的原因。那这4年的这个长期跟外界的隔离呢，已经造成他身体严重的这个退步然后恶化。那么他说呢，最近是有稍微改善的但是他觉得过去4年做得非常的这个不妥当的那最近是因为我们关注了以后，开始有一点改善的OK。Any more questions?
Hi, I'm Lee from Central News Agency. I just want to make sure that your statement, you said that during our meetings on Tuesday and Wednesday, I suppose that's with the Taiwan Penitentiary
Service.
Yeah, and so at that time, during the meeting, did you raise concerns about the choice of hospitals, or what did you discuss?
No, in fact, it's a good point. That was a very good meeting that lasted almost 2 hours with the Ministry of Justice. So it included the minister himself, his administrative vice minister, the head of the penitentiary department, and a number of other officials, as well as some legislators. And in the course of that meeting, exactly the points that we raised here were presented. And it was in that meeting that we emphasized the need for impartiality and transparency in the way in which the examinations were to be conducted and the treatment administered. So at that point, we felt that we had agreement that the selection of the hospital, the selection of the medical team, and the nature and the process of the examinations would be carried out in a manner that was agreeable to both, to all the parties involved, the family, the government, all the key actors. So that was, in fact, the end. That was the nature of that discussion. And in the end, I think the agreement was that there would be full transparency and full engagement in making this a process that all the parties could both have confidence in, as well as one that they could support. Does that make sense? Do you follow me?
Yeah, so at that time, you know that he will be transferred to the hospital he was transferred.
No.
No.
We didn't know.
Okay, so that's kind of not in the agreement.
Well, we have no concerns per se with the hospital.
Okay.
It's quite likely that the hospital is as professional and as highly qualified as any other hospital. We're not accreditation agencies that can make that decision. However, in principle, in the Tuesday meeting, we did agree that all of these key decisions would be made in a manner that was agreeable to all parties. And from our perspective, when a decision is made to do these examinations and to carry out the treatment in a government hospital, it creates even more responsibility for increased transparency, because the government obviously has more influence over its own hospitals.
So somehow the goal of that meeting was not met from your perspective?
Well, I haven't seen that it's met yet. I think we haven't seen any evidence that anyone other than the government itself, the Ministry of Justice, has been involved in any of the decisions.
Okay. 刚才他记者的提问我就不问了，不讲哈。在 Haros 他提到这个礼拜二下午4点呢，我们有几位委员陪同他们2位人权人士去见法务部部长跟次长呢。在当时的会谈里面呢，有谈到呢这个医疗小组的这个检查跟成立跟他的判断呢，应该是以一个公平然后透明的方式来进行，然后必须要家属跟这个法务部双方可以个别同意的这个医疗机构呢，这样比较好。那么荣总呢，由于陈水扁总统的家属跟阿扁总统个人的意愿没有被纳入了他认为说我们在法务部达到的那个结论，这一次在荣总这个医院的选择上，他并没有达到星期二那一个得到的那个结论那个标准。是。还有没有其他的问题？
Can I add one quick point to that? It's exactly this reason that that international standards stipulate that every prisoner has a right to an independent medical examination. In other words, the prisoner has to have confidence in the medical examination and the treatment that he or she is receiving while in detention. So that's the point. That's the point of our concern, and it's based on international standards.
也就是说，因为这样考量呢，国际标准是认为说，像这种医疗呢，必须要有一个独立的医疗的检查，然后呢，这个受刑人呢，也就是这个患者呢，他能够对这个检查会有信心的，这是一个国际的标准呐。那我们从这个国际标准去看呢，我们会觉得说，阿扁总统由于荣总跟军方的关系、跟政府的关系，我们会认为说，在这一点是没有做到。以上。Any more questions? Okay.
I have to go because
You
my turn to speak.
You use English.
Yeah, I can use that.
Everybody in Taiwan can speak English.
Hi, I'm from the German press agency, Deutsche Press. Question I have is, can you give us a little bit of more of a description of what your meeting with President Chen was like? You know, how did you interact with him? You know, what did you talk about? How reactive was he? What did you observe? Just a little bit more kind of, you know, like a better description of what that is, what that was like.
Well, I have to, Harold should comment on this too, because he's seen much more of President Chen prior to his incarceration and the concerns and this particular meeting. I think from my side, I obviously his reputation as a politician, as an intellect, as someone who's articulate, is well known, and the surprise, and I would have to say shock, in the conditions that we saw were really quite remarkable. When he's had a problem urinating over the past, I think the past week or two. So there's a catheter. He's in a wheelchair. However, the most troublesome part was that his speech was very slurred, difficult to understand. In about 15-20 minutes into the discussion, he became very fatigued, and the consistency and coherence of the conversation began to fade. So it was difficult for him to continue a constant stream of thought. He regained, I would say he regained the consistency a little bit later when he came to a little bit. But I would have to say that we approached this with some skepticism because there were many reports about how ill he was and his condition. And I would have to say that it probably was at least our worst of expectations. It was quite striking. Fortunately the generosity of the penitentiary department allowed us to continue for 45 minutes rather than the 30 minutes that's ordinarily allowed. And we had a discussion about, I would have to say that the discussion actually had very little to do with politics or principles or international standards. He was primarily concerned about his family and his own physical well-being, his discomfort, and he obviously began to feel the lack of coherence that was going on in his mind.
Howard 刚才讲，Hans 刚才讲的哈，这个比较观察陈总统的哈，可能 Howard 等一下会做补充哈。然后他讲到陈总统有几个这个他的身体跟他的言行的一些情况，让他感到相当的惊吓啊，然后惊吓包括呢哈，他尿的问题然后他讲话呢哈这个口齿不清然后呢这个20分钟的交谈以后，就会觉得身体非常的疲倦，然后心智呢一直没办法集中然后言语呢有时候前后会矛盾的那这个他幸好他的放风的时间有从30分钟延长到40分钟，其实是60分钟了45分钟那使得他可能情况还这个没有再继续恶化那所以他感觉到说有好几个情况了阿扁的总统现在身体状况是相当的不好。对，以上 OK。Do you want to add
something? Sure. I can say that I've actually watched Chen Shui-bian through a lot of his political career, and my impression of him in my memory is always that he was vibrant, vigorous, energetic, and extremely smart, extremely quick. And so it was with some amazement that when we saw him in hospital, it would not be too much to say that he was not even a shadow of his former self in terms of the vigor that he's well known for, nor for the kind of vitality that he used to exhibit. Taiwan has made strong strides forward in the last 20 years in terms of its development of democracy and the institution and respect for human rights. As Hans mentioned, we're profoundly gracious or grateful to the Ministry of Justice for providing us access in the hospital. we are grateful in particular to the minister himself, Jing Yongfu, and to also the House Speaker, Wang Jinping, who have actually reached out across this divide. But it's with some disappointment that we have found ourselves regularly trying to make more contact with people regarding President Chen's treatment on all sides of the divide, and we found that one side is not interested in this conversation at all. So Taiwan's recent history with regards to human rights, it's not looking so good if things continue on this path in terms of the way that Taiwan will be viewed in the international community. After many strides forward, it would be tragic to have giant leaps backward. And again, our position here is not based on any kind of affiliation or endorsement of any political party. And nor, frankly, is it about the fact that Chen Shui-bian used to be president. It's because he's a human being, and we would hope that these concerns would be extended to every single individual in the Taiwanese body politic.
哈罗他最后强调说，他们两位他们的团体是公正而没有受到任何的政治团体的影响的。然后台湾呢，以前在民主跟人权方面呢，有相当好的这个形象的哈。但是阿扁总统他觉得说他跟他讲话的时候有这个会颤抖，然后不像以前反应那么的快。然后这个在他的看医生方面呢，等等这些条件呢，从法务部长跟我们王金平院长跟他们的 meeting 里面所讲的结果他们出去外面看到的，以及听到外面的，就觉得相当的失望，也表示说王院长跟法务部长跟他们讲的，跟外面所表达的，其实是有很大的落差，让他们失望。然后他们认为呢，他这个人权跟民主呢，是影响台湾形象很重要的层面呢，那他不要说因为这个对阿扁总统的这个待遇呢，有违人权跟民主人权方面呢，而造成国际形象上来受损，这样以上好。Any more questions？
请问最后一个问题就是说，他这里有没有特别违反这个国际人权哪几个项目？
他已经都讲了，
不在这里面是吧？
他在里面，你仔细读就大概就可以说。
就是这几个
他没有说根据哪一个条项去讲，但是有违反现象大概在里面可以整理出来。
这就可以说，这个已经有没有特别在国际人权上面来讲是哪些是政要呼应马英九政府要注意哪些的地方？
他已经讲在里面，
都在里面，是不是？
If there's any interest in following up our reports as they proceed, or our interest in this case, you are encouraged to take a look at the Facebook page of facebook.com/Human Rights Action Center. We would welcome an ongoing sharing of information with anybody that's interested. Just let us know if you require a direct press release for any future reports. And
we'll post this.
Yeah, this will be posted in its entirety probably later today on the Facebook page. So thank you very much.
他们会把这个报告呢播在他们脸书，那有关他们这个案子将来的发展跟讨论呢，各位都可以用脸书跟他们来继续的来讨论，来追踪这样子。
他脸书铺上去是给全部都可以看，不是只有全部的那个 Facebook 上面的。
对。Any more questions?
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much. 那就我们这个记者会就开到这里。那很谢谢各位来这个参加。
原本共高峰赶快。So no more questions. So we thank you very much again, and maybe looking forward to seeing you in the near future.
Good. Thank you.
谢谢各位。
So would you say you're a little bit surprised?